warm welcome to Building Bharat, the Fintech evolution. Now in this decade since India's digital revolution has begun, there are few entities that have mirrored the nation's economic transformation, quite like PhonePe. You haven't seen many of those. From a fledgling startup to a platform that commands nearly half of India's UPI volume, this journey has been of relentless scale. But now as the company is moving towards the public markets, that narrative is shifting. It is no longer just about the transaction, as it were. It is about the relationship. So from the strategic depth of the non-payment revenue mix to the challenge of onboarding the next 200 million rural users, how do you build a moat in an interoperable world? That's the question we want to ask Sameer Nigam, co-founder and CEO of PhonePe. So good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me here, Vikram. It's a pleasure.
Tell me about the digital public infrastructure. We've seen it move in a robust kind of way from that cash-heavy transactions that we've seen over a period of time, now to having this. How has it really reflected in the kind of business model that you created to now, when you're ready to go into an IPO?
And honestly, 10 years ago, when I used to tell people India's going to try and create a UPI moment, I used to get laughed out of buildings. Because the idea that a state-backed, regulator-guided, non-profit entity will create a payment network, not just to actually compete with Visa or MasterCard, but to reach 500 million active users in about 10 years was unthinkable.
Right.
No one's created interoperable platforms like India has in the last 10 years. No one's created DPIs. So I think from our vantage point, the most exciting part today is not just are the DPIs firing, they are as sort of secular in terms of adoption as one had ever hoped for.
Correct.
I use it, everybody in my office uses it, everyone in my family uses them, every one of my staff uses it, every one of their family members uses it, everyone in their village hometowns uses it. I think the satisfaction of seeing technology finally really reach everyone, that line between India and Bharat was more about whether you could affordably reach people through technology. That line is vaporizing in front of us. And I think as a founder, that just being part of that journey gives us tremendous joy.
Yes, it's quite apparent, and that joy is translating into how you're going to the public markets. But even as you do in the kind of preparations that you're making, yes, indeed, I've seen that business kind of grow. It is a utility-driven business, of course. You're facilitators to an entire economy that is moving towards a Viksit stage, which is in itself a huge task, and it's an important task one has to kind of commit by way of that business model. But the offerings are kind of extending, and you're going into financial services. How important and crucial was it, and where did you start, and where are you taking it?
So we started, in fact, with saving products. We started with things like DigiGold almost 7 or 8 years ago.
Right.
And we introduced SIPs. We constructed SIPs on gold savings. India loves gold. But ETFs don't talk to the 700 millionth customer. Gold does. We got into mutual fund distribution, and we do SIPs. We're one of the fastest growing contributors to new SIPs in the country. And when you have 250 million people using your app every month, a sliver of a sliver adds up very, very fast. And I think watching Indians participate in the wealth market, in the savings market, in the formalized lending market, we're seeing that in real time. Non-payments revenues for us are now actually a majority, which most people don't really realize. In fact, we tried to put as much detail out as we could in our DRHP. It was a long DRHP. And I think both on the customer side as well as the small businesses, who we also, by the way, we have almost 5 crore merchants in the country.
Right.
And they are the backbone of the economy. I used to hear that, I used to read about it in newspapers, but until we started seeing the amount of money that flows through these businesses compared to enterprises, I didn't know how big they are collectively.
Is that because a lot of them were not in that entirely formal space?
It wasn't that they weren't in the formal space. They had bank accounts, but they weren't doing gross settlements on NEFT. They weren't using RTGS for payroll.
Right.
They were using cash to pay their supply chain and daily vendors. But when you take, I mean, again, 5 crores, 50 million, right? That's a very large number of people running a business. So even if they're doing 1 lakh crore transactions or value a month, just look at that math. It's massive, it's staggering. it's just extremely federated out.
Correct.
So it's not an attractive business model if you're not willing to play on very, very low ARPUs.
Right.
I often liken our business to like the telecom business. If voice won't make money for you, you can't even wait long enough to play the data game.
True.
You got to be able to play the voice game and make money at that with 1 billion people.
Correct.
Then everything else is gravy.
Right. So when you talk about that entire ecosystem which has grown over a period of time, and now you're sitting on this massive amount of data, which really helps scale up the business too, right? Isn't that exactly how it works? So the kind of model that you've kind of created, how far into the future have you seen? How India is growing, how the adoption rates are, and what users, and I believe you're sitting on 6 million users right now, they're already on board?
Closer to 650 plus,
So that,
about 100 times more than that.
That's what I'm saying. So with that kind of user base, the directions in which you can take this are enormous. How do you kind of build from that point onwards to the possibilities that exist?
We have almost 650 million lifetime users, but more importantly, every day, we have 150 million users. Over 100 million of them transact, send or spend money every day.
Right.
More than 2 times a day. In terms of value flowing, in the money transfer or merchant retail payments, in terms of money flowing through the platform, it's now approaching almost $2 trillion annually, right? NPCI, in fact, UPI is now almost at 1 ton of GDP. So the macro level data or patterns that we can see are, I think, unparalleled. That's in terms of the money movement. But in terms of sheer activity, the reason I again said we liken ourselves more to a utility or a telco. In India, we are the most traffic application across all categories put together of any app that an Indian company has built.
Right.
There are only 6 apps: Facebook, Insta, WhatsApp, YouTube, Google, Chrome, Search and Chrome, that have more activity. So we are used often and we see where the money is moving. So I think if you ask us in terms of where the market's moving towards, the youth in particular, the younger the population, they're digital first. They're not switching to from cash to digital payments. They never really went to cash.
They never did.
They never did. And the Gen A's in particular, as they enter the market, I don't think they'll know what a currency note looks like.
Correct.
So for them, everything's online. Their first insurance, their first loan, their first purchase, they're buying everything online. And I think we just need to make sure that we maintain the trust. There's a lot of focus on privacy. There's a lot of focus on making sure that risk and fraud, you just invest very deeply behind. Because people trust us in the payment space, just like when you hear of the proverbial WhatsApp news becoming WhatsApp Baba when you get past 300 million people, right? Like, I saw this on WhatsApp and it's the gospel truth. If you see activity happening on PhonePe, it's legitimized. So we need to be just careful of that.
Correct. So then, to be able to build your verticals based on the kind of generations that are going to be using your services in the future, tell me how you've thought it through, starting from the point of, say, insurance or mutual funds, like you mentioned. How much further can it go, and the direction in which it needs to go?
Well, for us, it's very, very early. I don't look at the opportunity in terms of the revenue number of today. I look at it in terms of the penetration of today.
Right.
I mean, when you talk about health and life insurance, let's just take an example, right? Globally, everyone's talking about AI. The biggest problem in a category like health or life insurance, one is, can you talk to the insurer and understand what they're saying? Second is mis-selling.
Right.
Right? These are perennial issues. NLPs got solved in a way that was unimaginable 5 years ago. So now every Indian in their native language can converse with an agent, which is trained on insurance plans and programs and data. So now you can actually get recommendations digitally in your language that a physical agent can't even give you today.
Right.
Without any perversion of intent. So it's almost as though like we can build an agent that can give you the precise policy that you should get, not the one I want to sell you, but the one that you need. And that over the next 10 to 15 years, I believe completely changes how people will think of insurance. India will have its Geico moment.
Correct.
If I think of lending, the payments data that is getting generated, both by the small businesses and the consumers, tells us so much, not just their income levels, but behavioral patterns, their risk propensity. So you can actually decide how to get them enrolled into the formal products at a much lower distribution cost now, with the right kind of products meeting them.
Right. So then, talking about the kind of products that you're going to create to be able to address the kind of user base that you have, and it's quite wide, to be able to reach out to the rural kind of user, that requires a different kind of pivot, you think, or it is going to happen organically?
To be very honest, I have not seen very much difference between a rural and an urban customer. It cuts across income and education levels.
Right.
The economy does not cut as much because there are people, 70% of our customers are beyond tier 2, right? Kind of like population also. Tier 1 metros, what 40% urbanization in the country? We don't see a per capita spend behavior that is wildly different at all. And I'm talking, and data doesn't lie, right?
Of course.
Data tells the truth at that volume. So across 650 million users, I don't see that distinction. The distinction I see is that those people have been starved for people providing them services. The bank branches don't reach tier 6s as much as the QR codes in the country today do.
So the penetration is
The penetration was the gap.
Correct.
Telecom, in fact, is your first guide.
Right.
If data or content, anything that reaches the masses across the board is used by everybody. You don't see or you don't read about different consumption patterns of data in rural India versus urban India. These are mythical notions.
Right.
And I think we are seeing a lot of our own myths growing up in cities. I'm a big town kid. I'm seeing so many myths get disrupted. The user in Bombay, the user in Bhusawal, the user 500 kilometers away from there are behaving very similarly.
So these patterns are trackable?
Yeah.
Are they usable for scaling up the business as well?
Yes.
Can you give us an example of how that's working?
One of my favorite categories, both gold and mutual funds, SIPs. It is amazing to me the number of people that start setting up SIPs at like 50 rupees at a time.
Right.
It's just incredible, the saving patterns of Indians. And again, cuts across all demographic classes.
Right.
And you just need to show the right people the right product.
Right. So then if you are working in this interoperability, this kind of universe where interoperability is the key, then you need certain hooks as well. When you're talking about, insurance renewals, you're talking about investment portfolios, you're talking about bill history as well. All of that create these hooks. To be able to widen your user base, you will need more of those hooks. Are you working on those?
So we have almost 100 use cases on the app. Every single bill payment you could do, and that means you'd actually be entering your details, you'd be setting up mandates, all of travel and transit, wealth, savings, insurance, loans, secured, unsecured, everything's there on the app. Which means that over time, when people invest more time with the platform and they try out more use cases, there is a larger sort of footprint that they already have. So that does create some retention, but I genuinely believe the reason that we are leading the payments market for this long is, it's actually at the end of the day, is the utilitarian value of payments. The only thing that gives you lasting endurance here is going to be a very resilient platform that scales to the market needs. I mean, we're talking about 400 million transactions a day.
Correct.
It's not easy to build. Success rate on every transaction is the distinguishing factor. The market's interoperable. There's over 100 apps that have entered.
Correct.
God knows, I think we've competed against everyone on the planet already, right? Every bank, every wallet, every big tech, every food tech, every e-commerce giant, everyone enters UPI payments because I think people think if you enter payments, you'll get a lot of users. We have a lot of users because we solve payments.
Right.
And I think for us, that is moat enough.
Right.
We focus on that.
Right. So the ease of doing business is something that is actually happening thanks to the digital infrastructure that you guys are providing. But the competitive landscape, and you touched upon that, is going to be increasingly getting severe. So to be able to stand out or perhaps kind of retain the kind of market share that you have, what is it that is going to be required? Is it going to be about the user experience? Like you said, the success rate is going to be an important piece. The depth of the ecosystem as well. Because having moved at the time that you have and the pace at which you have, that kind of gives you a lever. But how do you kind of maintain it?
I mean, there's two ways to look at this, right? NPCI started publishing data sometime in 2020. So it's almost 5.5 years. Every single month, we have maintained our market share. In fact, we've gained probably 5 points in those 5 years. So we almost 50% of value process in the country. So I'd like to believe you're doing something right. And as I said, I think for us, the mantra is payment success rate and scalability. And I think some of this we actually learned from the Chinese market. There you have 2 players processing 1 billion payments a day. We are not there yet. Alipay and WeChat.
Correct.
There to me, for a population as large as India's, China's the only proxy market. You can't learn anything from any of the Western markets.
Because of the sheer size.
I'm a UPite. I mean, UP, Bihar, and maybe you add Madhya Pradesh for like just fun. And that's the population of the continent.
Right.
So what are we talking about? Like, China as a proxy is a great market. And there again, it is microtransactions in the billions all day long. And the only reason you hold on to your market share is success rate, focus, use cases, building out the merchant network, building out more use cases. It's a grind business. It is not one where you'll have one killer feature that will change the market.
Correct.
Yeah.
So this is fascinating. But even as we talk about being prepared for your IPO, and there is that kind of evolution that we've seen in our entire financial services system as well. So how much of the processes did you have to kind of streamline to be able to hit the public markets? What did you have to really do to be able to get to this space where you're ready to hit the markets?
So we have this little mantra that we sort of share at the town hall and with every employee that joins the company. Because we knew we were entering a highly regulated space on day 0, we always said, govern yourself like a bank, innovate like a big tech, don't flip the two, you won't sustain the market.
Right.
So I think we are so heavily regulated by RBI, SEBI, IRDA, UIDI, that we've had a very, very sort of strong governance foundation for a long time. And we have an incredible board of directors that also oversees all the committees. So I think for us, we're actually easing into the public sort of governance part of it. We're excited about it because we actually welcome the responsibility of growing up, as they say, because at the scale at which we are operating, we are systemically critical, tagged or not. And it is important that the public understand and we build that relationship. Also, I think aspirationally as founders, if you're part of that Viksit Bharat journey with 500-600 million users, I want them to be able to participate. I want the retail shareholders to be able to participate in our growth. And I understand it's more of a responsibility, but I like it.
So it is a huge responsibility. There's no taking away from that. But it's also a responsibility in the sense of how we're seeing AI grow. And there's so much conversation about that. I'm just wondering how much of that is going to play in to the kind of playbook you've created for yourself at PhonePe and financial services in general, as an ecosystem, as an industry.
We've seen many, many waves of technology that have increased productivity. We've been fortunate in that we have very patient investors who've allowed us to make sure, even during cycles of disruptions in the past, for the last 10 years, we've never done layoffs. We've made our workforce more productive. And while that transformation happens, we move a little slow, but then we again pick up pace very quickly.
Right.
It's about retraining and retooling. AI is an interesting one because for the first time, you're talking about displacing the knowledge worker. But again, we're running a lot of different pilots. We have over 200 agents running right now internally in the company. We don't talk about it much because I think people don't really yet know how to, they haven't formed a view on, is AI going to take my job away or will it give me wings? I believe it will give people wings. It will change a lot of existing jobs and transform them. But it'll definitely reduce the cost of getting to the last mile with complex products.
Right.
That I'm certain of. Financial services will never look the same again.
It's clear that PhonePe isn't just counting transactions anymore. You know, you're talking about 600 plus million users. Now I've got that right. And you're counting the milestones of India's digital maturity. That's happening. So now as the countdown to the PhonePe IPO begins, the markets are going to be watching to see if the utility-first mode that PhonePe has built can indeed convert those 600 million plus users into a new generation of investors. This has been a masterclass in scaling infrastructure, as it were. So thank you very much for joining us when we wish you great luck for the IPO as it happens. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Vikram. Pleasure. Thank you.